A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May peace be with you. I hope you are well. Inshallah, today we are going to do the Tafseer and Qiraat, the reading and explanation of Surah number 113, the second last Surah. And there is one of the biggest controversies in the history and philosophy of Islam associated with this Surah and the last Surah. So these two Surahs, they are known as Mawzatain, 113 and 114, which means the two Surahs in which you are asking for protection from Allah. They have been revealed together. And generally, people differ in opinion. Some say they came in Mecca, some say they came in Medina, but in reality what happened is that they were revealed in Mecca, and then they were again revealed to the Prophet in Medina when there was a certain time that he needed to recite them, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the biggest controversy, which I think is not associated with any surah of the Quran and is associated with these two surah, is that among the Sahaba there were two opinions. One of the Sahaba, and a very, very reliable Sahaba, Abdullah ibn Masud, thought that they were not part of the Quran. Now, you won't come across this controversy about any other surah in the Quran. All the other revealed surahs, we are in agreement, are part of the Quran. But these two, Abdullah bin Masud said that these were not part of the Quran. And he believed that they were revelations from Allah. He did not think it wasn't a revelation, but they were just prayers taught to the Prophet to seek protection in certain situations. But all the other Sahaba, all of them, without any exception, they agreed that these are part of the Quran. Now, Abdullah ibn Masud is a very reliable person, and he's a big authority on the Quran, and he was a person who knew the Quran by heart. And the Prophet said, if somebody wants to listen to Quran as it was revealed by Allah, then you listen to Abdullah ibn Masud. He was one of the closest people to the Prophet, may peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he also had his own collection of all the surahs of the Quran, what was known at that time as a Mus'haf. But in that Mus'haf, he did not include these two surahs. So when at the time of Hazrat Usman, the third caliph of Islam, the Quran was compiled in one book form and 6 copies were made and sent to 6 different parts of the world, his Mus'haf, which came to Hazrat Usman, did not have these two surahs in it. And in fact, there is some historical record saying that he refused to hand over his Mus'haf to Hazrat Usman. So where did this controversy come from? It's very interesting. All the other Sahaba, they have even narrated asking the Prophet about these surahs, and the Prophet said they were surahs of the Quran. So Uqba bin Amir, he says that the Prophet advised him to read these two surahs. He named them as surahs, Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq and Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas. Abdullah bin Abis has similar story to tell that the Prophet advised him to read these two surahs. The word surahs was used by the Quran, by the Prophet. Ubay ibn Ka'b also confirms it, and of course Hazrat Usman also believed, and everyone else believed. So here comes the question: why did Abdullah bin Masud not believe that they were surahs? And there are two aspects of this story. One is the reason why he did not believe. When he heard these surahs, he took them as prayers taught to the Prophet by Allah. And he never had the opportunity, or he never had the desire to ask the Prophet whether they were part of the Quran or not. And he just assumed they were not. And he stood by his opinion. His opinion only became evident much after the Prophet had passed away and the Quran was being compiled in a book form. That was the time when the Sahaba sat together and they compiled it in a book form, and he raised his voice and said, I don't believe these two surahs to be a part of the Quran. During the life of the Prophet, he never had the opportunity to ask the question from the Prophet, or the question never bothered him. And the moral of the story here is that among all the Sahaba who believed that these two surahs are part of the Quran, when Abdullah ibn Masud differed from them, he was not labeled as a denier of the Quran. He was not labeled as a non-believer. He was not labeled as someone who was causing a division in Islam. People understood that his opinion was based on his understanding or misunderstanding of the revelation of these two surahs. And they respected his opinion because from his point of view, he was telling what he thought was the truth. And there is the message for all of us. Today, we start labeling people deniers of Quran and deniers of Hadith and deniers of Islam based on whether they fold their hands on the chest or on the belly or unfold their hands when they are praying or what their opinions are about different ahadiths. And this is the wrong attitude. Allah Ta'ala is going to judge people on their intentions and how sincerely they've understood the religion. And every one of us is bound to have some misunderstanding of the religion at some point in life, and most probably more than once. Even the Sahaba were not immune to it. So in this whole event, Allah has given us an example and taught us a lesson that if somebody is sincerely believing in their interpretation of Islam, you do not have to label them. Leave the judgment to Allah. And most probably, Allah is not going to punish them for a sincere misunderstanding. Now, let's move on to the next part. And that is a very interesting part. Why were these two surahs revealed? The surah number 113, Al-FALAQ, and An-Nas 114. And historical accounts suggest that they were first revealed in Mecca when there were attempts to cast a spell on the Prophet, and then they were revealed again in Medina when another attempt was made, and a very serious attempt to cast a spell on the Prophet, may peace be upon him. And the story is that there was a sorcerer by the name of Labayd bin Asim, who came from a tribe of the Khazraj, which is a big tribe in Medina, and there was a sub-tribe known as Bani Zuraiq. And he was a well-renowned sorcerer. And the Jews of Khaybar went to him and they said, well, we've tried to cast spells on the Prophet, may peace be upon him, and we have failed. Can you put a strong spell on him, and in return we'll give you some money in form of gold? And he agreed. So he contacted a young boy who happened to be a Jewish boy who was working for the Prophet at that time, and asked him to bring him some hair from the Prophet. So he stole a comb from the Prophet which had some of his hair in it, and he used those hair with a cover of a date, and he cast a spell, and he also made some sort of a wax doll and put some needles in it, very much like what the voodoo people do. And some narrations say that his daughters or his sisters were also involved in this whole spell casting process, and they buried it under a stone in a well. And this well was within the tribe of Bani Zuraiq and was known as the Arwan well. So it was well hidden inside a well, and the spell was cast. Now, fortunately, the spell did not affect the Prophet very seriously. He had some minor symptoms. He started to forget things about his general activities of daily life. It did not affect his worship or religious duties, and he also started to feel a bit tired. So only tiredness and forgetting just mundane daily activities, whether he had done them or he had not done them, he would forget that. And one day when he was sleeping, he saw two angels, one standing at each end of his bed, and one of the angels was asking the other, what has happened to the Prophet, may peace be upon him? And the other one said that a spell has been cast. And then he gave details of who had cast the spell and how he had cast the spell. And the first angel asked, what is the solution to this problem? And the other angel said that the water has to be drained from the well, and that the hair and all the other items on which the spell was cast need to be recovered. So the Prophet, may peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sent Hazrat Ali, Ammar bin Yasir, Zubair, and two other Sahaba from the Bani Zuraiq tribe. Now this well is within the territory of the Bani Zuraiq. So he gets two of the Sahaba who are from there. One was known as Qais bin Mahsin, and the other Junair bin Ayas, I think, if I've got the names right. And they went and they drained the water from the well and they recovered the items. There were 11 knots in the hair and a wax doll with about 11 pins in it. And the Jibreel archangel came to the Prophet ﷺ and advised him to recite the Surah 113 and 114, and with every ayah open one knot and remove one needle. And he did so, and by the end of these surahs, the spell was inactive. And then the sorcerer, Lubayd, he was called and he was told about it, that we have found what you had done. And he accepted his fault, and he said, yes, I did this in return for some money from the people of Khaybar. And the Prophet, may peace be upon him, forgave him. Now this is very important moral of the story. And the Prophet, he said, don't even talk much about this event. Allah gave me the cure, he saved me, and I don't want people to create a big fuss about it. So since the time of the Prophet, for any evil spells cast or any suspicion of evil, these two surahs are recited for protection. But they go beyond just recitation for spells. And when we go through the tafsir, inshallah, you will find out how in-depth protection they offer and what the beauty of these surahs is. So the first ayah is Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq. The simple translation is say, I seek refuge with the sustainer of the rising dawn or the daybreak. The words used here, we know the word kul, which means to say. The second word, auz, which is translated as protection or refuge, is not a simple word. Auz does not mean simple protection. If you want simple protection, it's called ijara. Auz, which is also used as yauz and ta'weez and ista'aza, it means to seek protection against something which cannot be seen. So the unseen elements, to seek protection against them. And the kind of protection you seek is that you enter into a submission to someone. You sort of like hold on tightly to someone, cling to someone. Have you seen children when they're scared? Like little toddlers, they cling to the mother or the father and they won't let go. That is the kind of protection you're seeking. So something unseen which scares you and you don't know what it is, and you're seeking protection of God, but in a way that you're clinging to God and you don't want to let go. The next word is Rabb, bi Rabbil Falaq. So Rabb, we have already talked in Surah Fatiha Tafsir, that Rabb is the master of creation, who has the authority. He is the sustainer. He's the one who fosters. He's the one who gives all blessings from inception to final completion. So from the start, creation of the universe to the end of the universe, the one who looks after you, who looks after the whole universe, who creates, who sustains, who fosters, who grows, that is the Lord who's known as the Rabb. And Rabbul Falaq is very interesting. Normally Falaq is described as daybreak, but Falaq means to create anything by tearing it open. So when the darkness is torn by the light, that is daybreak, Falaq. But also when a seed tears through the ground, springs out, that is Falaq. When water bursts out of the land, a spring comes out of a rock, for example, that is also known as Falaq. So basically we are saying that we are seeking protection from the master of all creations. Now think about it. If you are getting the protection from the Lord, from the God who has created everything, what can he protect you from? Min sharri ma khalaq, from the evil of whatever he has created. That's the second ayah. Shar is an obvious universal evil which can be seen very easily. It comes from the word sharara, related to the word sharara, which is a spark of fire. So anything which can harm you. So any kind of evil which can harm you and is very obvious, like a spark of fire is very obvious, that is known as shar. Similarly, something which is obviously good is called khair. And when the term sharri ma khalaq is used, that means from the evil of whatever he's created. So Allah Ta'ala is telling you here that everything which is created by Allah has potential to bring you harm. And how is that possible? How does every creation have the potential to bring us harm? Sometimes this harm is brought by the absence of the creation. For example, you're thirsty and you need water, but you don't have water. So absence of water is a potential harm. And sometimes that harm is caused by the presence of the creation. Water, for example, is life-giving, but we can also choke on water, and people can choke and die by choking on water. And we know from medical experience that people who have difficulty in swallowing and they have a blockage in the swallowing tubes in the esophagus, they cannot swallow water properly, and the water, instead of going to the stomach, goes to the lungs, and they can choke on it and can die on it. So here we are taught that every creation of God can potentially be a source of good or be a source of harm to humans and other creatures. Ayah number 3 says, وَمِن شَرِّ غَاسِقٍ إِذَا وَقَبَ. And from the evil of the darkness when it overspreads or intensifies. The word ghasiq comes from ghasaq, and this means when something starts to sink and when something starts to set. For example, ghasaq al-qamar is when the moon is setting, and ghasaqat as-sama is when the sky becomes very dark with the clouds. So anything which has darkness setting. And waqab means a sort of a darkness which is so deep that things are invisible in it. So if you have a deep, deep, deep well and you throw something in it and it disappears down it and you can't see where it is anymore, that is waqab. So here we are asking Allah to protect us from the evil that lurks in the deepest darkness which is not visible to us. And ayah number 4 says, وَمِن شَرِّ النَّفَّاسَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ. A simple translation would be, and from the evil of all human beings who are bent on occult endeavors, who are doing the occult, the spellcasters. Literally, naffasat means the ones that blow on knots. So it was a way of doing sorcery and casting spells that people would make knots and then blow on them. But it's a special kind of blowing. A simple blowing is nafakha, and breathing is nafas. But nafasa or nafasat is people who are blowing with a bit of spitting. So when they blow and they also spit at the same time. So that's an intentional thing. It's not a natural process of breathing or blowing. It's an intentional kind of blowing with spit to cast a spell. And many translators have translated it as witches or women who are blowing because it's a female tense. But Zamakhshari and Razi, who are one of the oldest Mufassirin of Quran, who have explained the Quran, they say that it is not necessarily women. In fact, the act of nafasa, blowing with spitting, is considered to be female verb. And anyone performing it, male or female, in a group would be known as nafasat. And Zamakhshari has a very interesting explanation for this. He says it's not just being safe from their evil, but also you're asking protection of Allah, that may Allah protect you from being part of those people who do such things. And the last ayah, وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدٍ. And from the evil of the envious when he or she envies. And most of the evil stems from the fact that people are envious of each other. I mean, if somebody's casting a spell on another person, they're not doing it out of good of their heart. It's not the goodness of their heart which is being reflected in sorcery and spells. They're doing it out of envy. And the Prophet had said that being envious could be positive or negative. And the positive envy is when you are encouraged by somebody and you want to be like them. For example, he gave 2 examples. One is if somebody's spending their wealth for the right cause, for helping people, and you feel, I wish I could also spend like this. Now, it's not wishing that I would have money like him or her and to spend it. It's wishing I could spend like them, which means I would have the same courage to part with my money for a good cause as these people do. So that's a positive envy. The second positive envy, which the Prophet has mentioned, is that a person has wisdom from Allah, hikmah. Now, hikmah is a kind of wisdom on which a person acts. It's not just knowledge. Hikmah is knowledge on which person also acts. So if somebody has wisdom or knowledge from Allah and he judges by it for himself and others, and he or she also teaches it to others, that is the kind of knowledge that you could be positively envious of and say, I also want to seek the same kind of knowledge from God on which I can act and teach it to other people. But the negative jealousy is when a person sees another person achieving something and they want them to suffer and lose it. That is the kind of hasad, the jealousy, which we need protection from. Now here is an important thing. One might object and say there is no such thing as jealousy or the power of jealousy or the evil eye. And it could be argued that there is no scientific basis for it. But based on neurological studies and study of the human mind, you can see that there is a very strong element of jealousy which can affect a person. Firstly, if you ask the neurologist and the psychologist and the psychiatrist what is the human brain made for, they will tell you that our brain has a big function to recognize facial expressions and tone of voice. So that is very evident when you see a baby or a child. They can't understand the words you say. A baby doesn't understand what you're talking and what language you're talking in. But your facial expression and tone of voice conveys your feelings to them. And they can easily detect if you're upset with them or if you're happy with them. So human brain was not designed to read text messages and emails and letters and words because there are people who have problem reading and we say they suffer from dyslexia. Our brains were designed to recognize facial expression and tone of the voice. And that's where most of the misunderstandings comes from. When you get a letter or an email or a text message, you often misunderstand it because you don't know what was the tone, what was the facial expression of the person who sent it to you. And if that person is not in your good books and you're suspicious of them, that person might be cracking a joke, but you take it as an insult. That's a very common experience, especially if it's a stranger and they are trying to crack a joke or have a nice friendly banter with you. You can get really upset with them. And then you might have come across people who try to be funny and they can't be funny because their facial expression and tone of voice is such that whenever they try to say something funny, people take it seriously. Now, here is where the jealousy, the hasad comes in. If somebody is jealous of you and they're disapproving of you and your actions, the look on their face, the tone in their voice, and the glance they give you, the look in their eye, is going to undermine your confidence. So if you're doing something, you won't even feel it, but your confidence would go down. And you can see it in sports. When you want someone to win, you cheer for them. And your positive attitude in cheering, it gives them courage. That's why it's always good for teams to play to the home crowd. And they say we are playing on the home ground is always beneficial. And if you want to discourage them, you boo them. And it's a booing which takes that confidence away from them and it affects their performance. So jealousy has got negative connotation. The person has got a negative attitude, negative vibes, negative facial expression, negative voice tone, might be mocking, making fun of you. And you may not feel or may feel it. It is going to rob your confidence. And that's where jealousy and hasad undermines your efforts. Now, similarly, the sorcery and spells and occult is also stemming from jealousy and hatred. But that is something which is usually not seen. So far, scientific knowledge has not gone to the root of it and proven anything yet. But in future, with more research, we will find out that having negative feelings about someone, casting a spell, can have negative effects on your health and mental well-being. One thing I would like to mention is there was a study done and published in a very big medical journal many years ago. In this study, they had two groups of patients, and these patients were not informed, but they had a group of people pray for them and wish well for them. So half of the patients were prayed for and the other half were not prayed for. And the patients didn't know who's getting prayers and who's not getting prayers. And they saw that the group of patients who had positive prayers for them, they responded better to treatment. It's medically well established that people with a positive mental attitude do better with treatment and combat disease more effectively. But now the evidence is emerging that other people having positive feeling and thoughts for you could also boost your response to treatment. In future, if we do more research, we would be able to find out what the connotations of negative feelings can be on a person's health and well-being. Now, before we complete the tafsir, I would like to mention something here, that if you see Surah Al-FALAQ, it starts with us seeking protection from Allah from everything. Min sharri ma khalaq. Everyone and everything created. And in the next portion, it narrows down to the evil of the darkness, things that we cannot see. So the things we can see, we've already asked protection for the seen and the unseen, everything created, and now we're specifying protection from those we cannot see. Because what you can see, you can partly protect yourself from them. But the evil of the unseen, for example, a virus or a bacteria you can't see in your food and your water, you cannot protect yourself from it. And then it goes down to min sharri naffasati fil uqad, groups of people who are wishing you bad. And then the last one is min sharri hasidin idha hasad, individuals who are jealous. So you see the beauty that you started by asking protection from everything and anything, and towards the end you are asking protection from the evil of individuals. So from a collective evil to an individual evil, we are seeking complete protection of God, and we are asking God to protect us from what we can see and what we cannot see, the dangers that we can detect and the ones we cannot detect. And another interesting aspect is that in this surah, Allah is mentioned once, Qul a'udhu birabbil falaq, and then the evil has been mentioned 4 times. When you go to the next surah, Surah Nas, inshallah, we'll do it next Friday, Allah Ta'ala is mentioned multiple times, Qul a'udhu birabbin nas, malikin nas, ilahin nas, and the evil is mentioned only once, min sharril waswasil khannas. And we'll talk about the importance of that and why you have to call upon Allah more when you are talking about the evil of doubts being created in the heart. So inshallah, till then, please remember everyone in your prayers. Once again, thank you very much for listening. Thank you to everyone who's made this effort possible, especially to Yasser Salim, who is uploading the videos and making them available every week, mashallah. May Allah give us all ajr, including him, in this life and the hereafter. Ameen summa ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.